I'm Kevin Scott. I'm the owner of Muskoka Landscapers, and I like to build cool shit, and I am a hardscaper.
What's happening, hardscapers? This is episode 187 of the How to Hardscape podcast, where we talk about how you can start and grow your hardscaping business. And today's episode is brought to you by Cycle CPA. If you need help with your bookkeeping, accounting, or CFO services in your business, especially this year, reach out to Cycle CPA. You can reach out to them at cyclecpa.com or on Instagram, cycle_CPA. Let them know How to Hardscape sent you for $200 off their services there. And if you're looking for a software to help operate and streamline processes in your business like budgeting and estimating, check out the How to Hardscape headquarters. It's available to How to Hardscape members. So go to members.howtohardscape.com and take a look at what we've got there, or just shoot me a message at How to Hardscape on Instagram. And without further ado, let's get into today's episode with Kevin from Muskoka Landscapers. All right, Kevin, let's get to know a little bit about you yourself and how you got started in the industry. Let's start there. Give our audience a little bit of context about your beginnings in this industry.
Okay, well, I actually got started in the golf industry, not the landscape industry. So I worked for a company from Central Ontario for 10 years, building golf courses all around Ontario and some outside of Ontario. And that was kind of my introduction to, kind of a supervisory role, building these large scope projects, ton of sub trades, tons of staff. The company I worked for, actually, when I started, we went from 90 to 400 in the matter of like 3 or 4 years, employees. So it was a very quick progression, and it was a lot of fun for a lot of time. The hardscape portion started coming in when we started doing all the clubhouses. So we got to work with different landscape architects, got into a little more hardscape, less earth moving. And that was kind of my transition into it. And then from there, my family and I had moved to Muskoka. I had grown up here. I'd lived in Richmond Hill for 10 years and then came back, and we were raising a young family. And it just seemed like a good time to try something new and try something on my own. I think I always had a little bit of sort of entrepreneurial spirit. No experience, but I knew I wanted to give it a whirl. I had friends who were contractors, and that's how Muskoka Landscapers got started 15 years ago.
Amazing. So going back to your experience working for somebody, and then, getting to starting your own business, Muskoka Landscapers there, what kind of skills were you able to acquire from that previous business as an employee that you were able to kind of transition towards becoming a business owner? Or even on the adverse side of that, what things did you kind of want to forget and kind of leave with them and when you're starting your own business, to especially, I guess, treating employees, but either side of that coin, however you kind of want to take that answer there?
Yeah, I certainly learned a lot. And I know, not that a smart guy told me long before I even worked for them that, you can sometimes learn just as much watching somebody do something wrong as you can watch somebody doing something right. And I've used that for many years. But the company that I was working for during the golf process really taught me a lot about systems, staffing, structure, progression, how to progress people. And then keep in mind, this was over a very short period of time. Again, we went from 90 to 400 employees in about 3 years. So you can imagine like the equipment requirements and trucks and software. And this was, mid 90s, early to mid 90s. So cell phones were just kind of out, but not really out. And they did such a good job with it, and watching them grow, and not just in the field, but also in the office, getting better people in place to help manage all the crews and site supers and provide information and tracking and timesheets. And I think that was probably one of the bigger parts. I wish I would have paid more attention to it when I was there, because of my focus was more construction based. And managing sites more than managing money. And in hindsight, I think I probably could have learned more from them while I was there. And one of the owners who became a very close friend, I still look to often for help or support.
And then fast forward to when you want to start your own business. What does the vision look like when you are ready to start that business? Does it look like, where you are today and where you kind of the clientele that you want to service and the amazing landscapes that you guys are building over there at Muskoka Landscapers? Was that always like the vision from day one and you, implemented that right away and started going after those clients? Or was this like a progression over years to get to where you are today?
Yeah, I think at first it was scary as hell because I really had no idea what to expect. And I think financially it was pretty stressful as well. I had a good career, well-paying job, vehicle benefits, pension, all the good stuff. I had a 5 and 2-year-old at the time. So that part of it was very scary to make the transition. And I think, and completely honestly, like my whole motivation was to make more money. I thought doing something on my own, I could just make more money. I never really had a long-term plan, probably in my first 4 to 5 years. It just kind of evolved. And then once we really got some good traction, that was more when I started to dive into, okay, well, what else could we do to make this better? And what systems could we incorporate to really support our growth? And because literally it was 3 or 4 guys the first year, 6 or 7 the second year, 8 or 9, and just so on, right? So now we're running around 40. We're involved with other companies, ownership level and management level, and it's become a lot of fun. But it wasn't until I kind of worked on my skills and learned from other people, and obviously lots of reading and training and educational programs and system-based software, a lot of things like that really help streamline it and teach me how to run a better business.
Right. Can you paint the picture of Muskoka and what it's like to work for a Muskoka client for our audience? Just to give you a little bit of context, most of our audience is actually in the States, a portion of it in Canada. So Muskoka, what does Muskoka look like, that the region, and what does your work typically involve?
Yeah, so 98% of our work is lakefront properties, so cottage-based customers. A lot of people call it the Hamptons of the North. But yeah, we're dealing with high-end projects. A lot of the stuff that we're working on is anywhere from 5 to 25 million, real estate value. Some of our projects range from 200,000 to 2 million, depending on the site and the scope. There's always lots of different programming involved, which kind of makes it exciting. We kind of specialize more in technical projects where there's a lot of, moving parts and sub trades, pools, saunas, spas, outdoor kitchens, outdoor masonry, some pretty contemporary work as well. Island work. We do a lot of island work. It's become a lot more popular in the past few years. But one of the fantastic things about it is, the sites are amazing. The projects themselves allow for a lot of creativity. You've got customers who aren't spending their last 200,000 or 2 million, so they're willing to do cool stuff. And a lot of times, a lot of our best inspiration comes just from the guys being on site, and whether it's looking at something at lunchtime or driving past it every morning, or and because they're larger projects, you're on site longer. So you do develop a bit of a relationship with the customer. Sometimes we have different landscape architects involved, certainly a lot of different building architects, which also bring some flair to the projects. But it's a very unique area. It's quite large, but also quite small. So customer base is a wide range of people, from all different backgrounds, and that's probably one of the things I enjoy the most is you meet so many people that are making money in such interesting ways. So it's unique is probably the best example. And proximity, we're an hour and a half north of Toronto, so flight wise and drive time, we've got a large gathering from there. But we have customers from New York, overseas, California, South America, all over the world.
So then you mentioned in there starting to do island work, and I want to touch on that. But especially you mentioned getting into these more like outdoor living spaces, fire features, and outdoor kitchens. Since your time starting in business, have you seen that evolve and start to get more and more popular up there, or has it always been popular up there, being that it's like a resort destination type, vacation style clients that are conglomerating there? Or have you seen that progression? Because since my start in this industry in the mid 2000s, I've definitely seen that progression to outdoor living, hardscapers taking on that entire scope of the project. And then I'm sure everyone in the past 2 years, that's only exploded even more.
Yeah, the past 2 years have been bananas for sure. But I think, it's been a slow progression. But like as an example, pools, for instance, in cottage country, our first 10 years or even our first 12 years in business, I think we did maybe two pool projects. There was always lots of spas, hot tubs, a lot of shotcrete spas. But in the past 3 years, maybe even 4 years, we've probably put in over 20 pools. This year alone, I think we'll have done 5 or 6 plus 7 or 8 large spas. So that's been an interesting progression considering it's lakefront, but and you get torn, right? Because you have the traditional cottagers who possibly have been here a long time or are new, but their vision of the cottage is much different than the person who wants to install a pool. Yet in the same breath, you can see both sides of it. The pool is always 85. Most of the pools we're doing are 4 feet deep with an infinity edge. So it's great for kids and it's easy to see them and it's safe. And it's always 85. We have a very short season up here. Our summer is really July and August. June can be a good month as well. And in the same breath, the area is beautiful year round. We've got all the fall colors coming up. Spring is amazing outside of the black flies and mosquitoes. But for most of our clientele, their season is quite short. It's basically the 2 months. And, May 2 for Labor Day. Some come for Thanksgiving, but not many. So pool really lengthens their enjoyment period over the season because of the temperature and no fluctuation in safety or accessibility. And then the outdoor kitchens have been huge. I think that's probably been a little longer timeline, like probably the past 8 to 10 years, that's really taken off. Outdoor masonry. I mean, there's always been masonry components to our projects, whether it's retaining walls or wet lay patios, heated driveways. But the outdoor masonry, like outdoor fireplaces and outdoor cooking facilities, big charcoal pits and all that kind of stuff has really evolved over the past, 7 to 10 years.
And when I go through your projects, I see like a lot of natural elements to it, natural products and everything like that. And it makes sense given the area that you're in. And then I'm also seeing like very more modern structures, even for those cottages, even pop up here and there. When it comes to choosing products for a specific project for a specific client, where do you even start with something like that? Are you looking at the architecture of the cottage? Are you looking at the surroundings? Are you leaning clients more towards, say, a natural type product, say like flagstone or something like that? Or I just kind of want to pick your brain on terms of choosing the right product for the client or even for the environment that you find yourself in there.
Right. I would say 90% of our projects are granite. Mm-hmm. So whether it's local, imported, black, gray, pinky gray, brownish, it's generally granite. We do some limestone projects, but very few. We might do one interlock job a year. It's not really our wheelhouse. And then a lot of it starts with kind of the designer and the architect's intent, customer preference, and then our in-house designers, work with the customers. And our typical strategy is, we have the initial meeting, we talk about what their programming's like, what they're hoping to do with the cottage, all the wish list. We have like this long 30-piece questionnaire that they get and fill in. And then the big thing is to get them to some sites and get a better sense of, do they like the rectangular or dimensional contemporary look, or are they more traditional and they want the 5-point pathways? And, what size of stone do you like? This path could be 5 feet, could be 8 feet. Even the patio portions, we've got large, extra large, jumbo, size of treads. So that really helps narrow down the design process, because now we've had a look at, I like the feel of this. I wish this was a little bigger. I like this color. I don't like that color. I like that light fixture. I don't like that light fixture. So that really helps the designer start to narrow down. And then from there, things kind of evolve, and you start with checking all the boxes and then budgeting and then kind of working your way backwards. But back to your original question, a lot of times the stone selection and stuff is already selected by the architect, because a lot of the projects we're doing, we're transitioning from an interior stone to an exterior stone with a 5-inch step. So a lot of times we're already, following their lead. And the other thing that we've started to do a lot more of is, especially on the contemporary builds, even on some of the traditional builds, is do more dimensional products attached to the building. And then as we head to the boathouse or the lake, we go a little more traditional 5-point, a little more random shapes, a little more cottage feel. And then everything around the building is kind of crisp and clean and suits the building.
So with that, I think I was getting a little bit ahead of myself there with that question, but having moved to a new area from where you were when you were an employee to starting your own business in the Muskoka area, where do you even get started in terms of starting a business in a new area? You did mention that you grew up in Muskoka. Did that kind of play into being able to meet with the right people, especially, architects, and networking that way to kind of grow your business? Or just in general, what was like a really beneficial thing for you in moving to a new area and starting your business to start to create that network of people, whether that's hiring employees, whether that's finding the right clients for you to serve, or, getting in with those architects? How do you get that ball rolling when you first move?
Yeah, I was very fortunate, but what I would say for anybody out there that is thinking about starting, a lot of it's relationship based. That whole progression from first job to 50th job is all about relationships. Whether it's with your customer as an architect, your truck provider, your mower guy, your excavator guy. And for me, what had happened was we had done 2 or 3 golf projects in the Muskoka area. So I had about 2 or 3 years of working with a lot of local contractors, sub-trades, electricians, plumbers, all kinds of different things. Plus I had friends in the area. And then one of the golf projects we were working on, they were building 3 or 4 new cottages on a small lake attached to the golf course. And we were lucky enough to get 3 of the 4 our first year in business. And keep in mind, these were all fantastic projects. And then, you get good word of mouth from that membership at the golf course. And then that 200 people have 5 friends each on the lakes. And they have 5 people. And the funny thing is, in 15 years, and a few of the other contractors that do similar work and myself, we always laugh because we rarely see each other on projects. And it's because you get into, like, 95% of our stuff's referral now. And it wasn't always like that. Certainly in the first 5-7 years, it wasn't. We were, the first couple of years, you're kind of taking what you can get, whatever comes along and fits your schedule. And then you start to build a bit of a customer base. You do some, successful projects with really happy customers, and they have a friend that's doing the same, or just bought a new cottage, or is building a cottage. We never really did much residential work, like even at the beginning, maybe 1 or 2 projects. But I think as that growth continues, you end up with this friend group of customers that, might only be 30 or 40 people, but they always have 3 or 4 friends that are doing something. So And for us at the size we are, we might only do 18 to 22, maybe 25 projects in a year. So it's not, you don't need 1,000 customers. It's not like a maintenance business where you need lots of volume, or big sites, I guess. But we've been really lucky with just building those relationships with our customer base and trying to work with the repeat people. Like we work with a lot of spec guys that do 1 or 2 projects a year. And then, just referrals, previous customers. I mean, people are always adding, once they've been at a property for 3 or 4 or 10 years, they're ready to add things or change things. But I think it's like anybody who's in business would say, it's all about relationships.
Mm-hmm. Just a thought that came into my mind as you're speaking there. It's, we talk about finding the right clients for your business. And when you live in a bigger city, that can be a little bit more difficult. The pond is huge, right? And it's a matter of finding those right clients. But where you are, it seems like it's a smaller pond, but a larger amount of the right clients where, they got that disposable income, this is their cottage homes or whatever, and they're willing to kind of invest into theirs and spend that money. Have you found that to be kind of the case where you are, where smaller amount of people in the area, but a very good amount of the right clients for your type of business?
Yeah. And I think you got to find whatever niche you're trying to cater to, you got to find that and put all your effort into that. We often get a lot of calls from people that maybe see us on Instagram or see one of the trucks or something like that running around and call. And if there are projects like less than 80 grand, we just know it's not a good fit for us unless it's a previous customer who wants to add something, right? Then we'll look at it. But those smaller projects, just the way we're structured now, we choose to pass those types of projects on. Sometimes we'll help with design work, make sure that customer is getting competitive quotes and that kind of thing. But like in our area, as in big center, small center, whatever, everybody has like a group that they're catering to. There's some very big businesses up here that just want to do stone. They just want a hardscape and be gone. There's other companies that just do planting, irrigation and lighting. Like there's all these variables that come in, but our niche has been technical, large projects. Not saying we don't still do some small projects. And certainly we do more smaller projects when we have voids in our schedule. I think even though it's a small area, there's a lot of landscapers.
I just want to take a break from today's episode to talk about our sponsor, Cycle CPA. You may have a CRM or project management software in place, but what data are you using to ensure your estimating is accurate? Having a proper accounting setup and accurate bookkeeping done is key to understanding overhead expenses and other costs that must be recouped in your estimates. Cycle CPA is a remote bookkeeping and CFO firm that helps to connect the dots from the financial reports to the hardscape and landscape data needed in order to reach high profits. They provide landscape and hardscape industry benchmarking, job costing, financials by service line, advisory meetings, and much more. Cycle CPA's team of accountants are specialized within the hardscape and landscape industry, and you can visit them at cyclecpa.com, and for $200 off, mention the How to Hardscape podcast. Now back to our episode. And going off what you said there, choosing that number of like say 80,000 or whatever that number might be for your business, or choosing or knowing the right project for your business, has that evolved over time, or was it like when you started your business at first, it evolved to that over time? Like where do these numbers come from, and where does that ideal project come from for your business?
I think just history, right? It's just knowing what we've done. And I think every business goes through those cycles. Like in the beginning, you're taking whatever you can get and rolling with it. It's not because it's a right fit job or the type of work you like to do, or it's something you're necessarily even good at. You just want the work and you want to keep your people busy and keep things rolling. But as your company matures and you start to understand what you're good at or what you'd like to be better at, and I think you start focusing your energy in those avenues, then that's the type of business that you attract, and certainly the type of customer that you attract. And yeah, I think it's just an evolution. You can get into business with a certain plan. Oh, I'm only going to do this type of project. That's tough to do. It's tough to do. It's tough whether you're in construction or you're a designer or a landscaper. You got to be diverse enough to do multiple types of projects, but spend your energy on the ones that you're focused on. And like they always say, where focus goes, energy flows. So I think the more you focus on a certain type of customer, a certain type of project, a certain type of architect, chances are you're going to be doing more of that type of work.
And with that, you had mentioned working on islands, and I did want to kind of pick your brain on what are the logistics around doing a project on an island and getting material in and out of there. Can you give us a little bit of insight as to what that kind of looks like when you're working on an island?
Yeah. First of all, they can be a pain in the butt, like depending on logistics and how far are you from the landing and time of year. It's always romantic to drive the boat back and forth to work from May till September, but not much fun in October and November. When it's -2 and snowing or raining. And but yeah, we've always done island work, but in the past 4 or 5 years, because properties are filling up and islands are generally more cost, they're less expensive than mainland properties. So they've just become more popular as the mainland properties fill up and escalate in cost. Logistically, it's just more planning. You're basically handling everything twice. You got to load at the landing, you got to load the barge, you got to unload the barge, you got to stage it on site. Depending on the site, it's sometimes difficult. Some of the islands, depending on the size of them, you're dealing with 360-degree views. So it's a little trickier to hide things like propane tanks and generators. And so screening's important. Screening from the water is important. Access on site and working your way out to your landing is a little more planning involved. All the underground's a little bit more complicated because you're not coming from a fixed point. But all in all, the work's the same. So for us, we've always quoted the projects as if they are mainland projects. And then we charge all the barging and time at the landings as T&M. So we'll come up with a budget for the customer, 50 grand, 100 grand, whatever it might be for their particular job. And then just kind of track that on a bi-weekly basis, knowing that because that's the big problem, right? With the barging is sometimes the barge is late, sometimes the truck's late, the barge is late. So you're getting billed for the barge, but your deliveries aren't there yet. You have a loader breakdown. You have a barge get stuck at, not that happens very often, but it can happen. Moving equipment back and forth all the time. So it takes all that guesswork out of the costing or your quoting. And I think it's a little more fair for the customer because we know with the amount of island projects we've done, when you look at the total tonnage and equipment time and staff and travel, you can go, okay, well, if it's a $500,000 job, we need 60 grand worth of barging or 100 grand, depending on the project. And just use that experience to give the customer a reasonable budget. And then the rest of it's handled like a mainland job.
Really fascinating. And must be a logistical thing that you've probably had to learn over the years to be able to come to something like this.
Yeah. fortunately, there's lots of other guys that do it in the area, and we have some great barge companies locally too. Those guys are doing it every day, all day, from ice out to ice in. And even when ice is in, sometimes we're still going out and working on the islands once the ice is safe. But technology's come so far too. There's a few companies that have those Sherpas. I don't know if you've seen those. They're like a giant Argo with flotation tires that if they go through can still climb back onto the ice. And that's been a game changer because now it lengthens your season in the winter. It's just a lot more planning, probably a little more admin.
Yeah. And then and when it comes to employees in your area, how are you going about recruiting and retaining employees? Is it I guess I'll just leave it as broad as that for you to take that wherever you want. How are you at Muskoka Landscapers recruiting and retaining employees and making it? I mean, it's fascinating work that you guys do. It's beautiful work that you guys do. In that area, though, is it more difficult to find employees?
Housing's difficult.
Right.
Lots of people want to come and work, but housing is tricky. You've got to get creative, or we've had to get creative. And I think too, like, just to backtrack a little bit on the employee, I think 5-6 years ago, I kind of changed my focus from profits to kind of employee happiness. Not happiness sounds hokey, but my number one priority is staff, then customers, then quality, and then money. And once we started turning that culture a little bit and really buying into it and having our management buy into it and our staff buy into it, we've had great retention. We've got a lot of people that have been here much longer than 5 years, some for 15, some for 10. We seem to always fluctuate for, unskilled labor every season in the spring, right? There's always 2 or 3 or 5 people that change. In the same breath, that's becoming smaller. I think it's always an issue for us because we're always adding, so if you're always increasing people, somewhere down the line, you're going to need 2 or 3 more field staff to help accommodate other people. But probably the number one thing, especially in the past couple of years, is you got to pay more. So we had to go through the process of raising all our current staff's rates so that we could hire at higher rates. Last year was a great success for us. We did a training week in March where we invited potential candidates to come for a free week of training. We paid them $25 an hour to come for a week of training. We did, like, first day was mainly safety and PPE. Second day, they got into some saw work, how they were pulled apart, how to put blades, change filters, that kind of stuff, run a laser, plate tamper, skid steer operation, a little bit with excavators, but not much. How all the tools work, how to mix fuel properly, how to do everything safely. And that was a big success for a bunch of reasons. One, all the supers organized it. So they really had to get together and connect on how are we going to train people? Because you know what it's like with landscape, everybody does things a little bit different way. So that was a great process for them to go through. And then for them to run it as well and run the training and deal with the different groups. So we basically had small groups of people going around to different areas for a different skill. The other thing it did was it kind of let everybody have enough time together to talk about, personal interests, family, see what kind of people they were like. Were they a good fit? Did we want them? And not only that, when it came to the end, it was like a draft because all the supers knew exactly which people they liked. So that was kind of a fun process as well. But yeah, I think as business owners, we just got to get creative on how we're hiring. And knock on wood, our retention has been good. And again, as a new business, it's difficult to do everything at once, but I wish I could go back and have started doing what I'm doing now long time ago. Even when it was easy to get staff, it it's still all stuff that we should all be working on as an industry. Everybody used to think landscapers were a guy with a lawnmower in the back. But there's different levels, there's different evolutions to it. And I think, like any successful business, you need to have a pension plan, you need to have benefits, you need to have family flexibility. And these are all things that were kind of frowned upon in the landscape industry forever. Higher rates. I mean, and I'm not dissing anybody, electricians, plumbers, whatever, but when we show up to a project, we're coming with, lifters that are $7,000 a piece, saws that are $1,500 a piece, blades that we go through constantly at $100 a pop, fuel, plate tampers, laser levels. Like, we're coming with 30, 40 grand worth of equipment on a day-to-day basis at multiple sites. And yet there was always this misconception that we should be working for $40 an hour. It's not realistic. Then you can pay 75, $80 for a carpenter. And again, I'm not dissing carpenters. I'm just saying, as an industry, the landscape industry needs to work towards those goals. There's no reason that our bill out rates are $75 an hour. But they're going to have to go up. We're paying everybody more. We need to pay more.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, that's only going to get worse and worse, especially as the labor shortage becomes more and more. What would you say to a business owner as a hardscaper that just doesn't think that they can charge more? Like, how did you get over the hurdle and decide, what, like, the numbers just make sense. Like, we need to charge more because we're needing to pay our employees more to retain them, or to even just recruit them in general. Like you said, the amount of equipment that us as hardscapers, landscapers need at any given point in time, and not to mention the amount of specialization, the amount of knowledge that we need. Like, a carpenter deals with wood, a landscaper deals with, especially in an outdoor design build space, an amazing amount of things. So what would you say to somebody that's struggling to raise their rates or to raise what they're charging, or to somebody just getting into business in general and trying to decide, like, what am I worth? How do I build out this project?
Yeah, know your numbers. So last year when we started advertising about doing this training week for the $25 an hour, I had quite a few people outside of our area and around just saying, I can't afford to pay my people that. And, it all depends on what your business is too. Like, the other thing to remember when we're talking, like, we're competing with all the other trades as well. And depending on where you live, you got 8 or 9 months to do it, not 12. So we have seasonality. Costs don't change, like the excavator payments and the truck payments and the insurance and staff and salaries and all the benefits, all that stuff doesn't go away in the winter. It's still got to be accounted for somewhere. I think you really got to know your numbers, because I think, and admittedly, years ago, mentally you're thinking one thing, not really diving into it. You think, oh, this square footage install rate is great. And it might be if you have no overhead costs and just a pickup truck and a plate tamper and one other guy. But if you've got an office and a full-time accounting person and a general manager and project managers and there's different values in those things, right? The guy with the 2 people in a pickup truck isn't doing the same projects as the guy with 30 staff, and maybe in the maintenance area, maybe, but you know what I'm saying? You need to really understand your numbers to make sure that you're making profit. Like, it drives me bananas every year when we go to the conference and the majority of landscape companies are making 1 or 2% net. Like, that's a job, right? and I think a lot of that has just got to change with education and, coaches. There's so many great business coaches out there. That would probably be my first recommendation to anybody who says, I can't afford to pay more. Get a business coach. The money you spend with a business coach will change your whole business. And don't be afraid to charge more. Like, yeah, you might turn some people off. And again, I know it's much harder when you're starting out because you're so keen to start building a brand and building a business. And we did the same thing for a lot of years. We were I don't want to say the cheap guy, but we were more affordable than others doing the same work for a long time until we were able to develop a brand and hone our skills and do a better job and be more efficient with planning and pricing and scheduling. And people see the value in it. And I think the other thing we have going for us as contractors is customers are much more educated these days. Like they understand that there is a labor shortage. They understand that people need to make more. That gone are the days of $20 an hour. And I'm not sure where it's like where you are, but even with dual income at $20 an hour, that's still a tough go if you've got a mortgage and a car and a child. So we'll see what happens, recession or recession reset. That may slow things down a little bit and make it more affordable again. But I think those days are over. And I think as an industry, we just need to realize it, figure out ways to work with it, and not be afraid to say, I can't do it for that. It's a hard thing to do, especially if you have no work. But
hey, do you have a budget
time,
set for 2023? Are you starting the estimating process with a budget in place to ensure that you are recovering your overhead expenses, labor, material costs, profit, and other hidden expenses within your business? Do you know that you're making profit on certain projects throughout the year? If you're struggling with any of these things, then the How to Hardscape headquarters can help you this year. Check it out at members.howtohardscape.com or shoot me a message at howtohardscape on Instagram. This software will streamline processes in your business. It's going to help you budget, estimate, ensure that you are making profit on projects throughout the year, and help you adjust throughout the year. We're also going to be continuously improving this software to include more and more features, as well as the content that's already available to members right now if you're looking to train your employees as they come in. So once again, members.howtohardscape.com. The price will continuously go up as more features and as more content is offered over there. So there's never a bad time to get signed up with that. And with that being said, let's get back to the episode. Definitely. And that brings me to, you mentioned mentors, coaches. Kevin, anybody here that you'd want to give a shout out to on the podcast that has helped you along the way, whether that's online, offline, a mentor or a coach, other landscapers, hardscapers in your area, or anybody in general that you'd want to give a shout out here on the podcast for maybe other people listening along to go check them out, or
I think
maybe get some
as far as the shout out goes, I'll give a shout out to my wife, Kate. She keeps me in check and grounded. But as far as people, I'm very fortunate. I have many people who inspire me, from some of my business partners, customers, the people that I work with every day, close friends. I think mentoring is a super powerful a thing, not only for business owners, but just for people in general. I think if you can find somebody who has done what you're hoping to do, they can certainly help you accelerate your pace and get to where you want to be much faster. But yeah, I think mentoring, everybody should have, and not just one. I think multiple mentors is great, and hopefully from different avenues of business or from different backgrounds. I think it's a key to success, and certainly has helped me immensely over the years.
With all those different businesses that you've got mutual partners for or partners with, are these all kind of servicing, say, clients that come to Muskoka landscapers? Do these businesses all kind of feed one another in terms of the work that they're taking on?
Yeah, they're definitely vertical. Yeah, so we have a stone supply business. That's a shared thing. We still deal with other suppliers often. But that's one thing we've got going. We're into the pool construction now. And then we do a little spec building as well, which is great.
And then Kevin, I do have to ask, what are you doing? What's your role and what are you doing day in and day out? Like, what does your day-to-day look like for Muskoka landscapers at this point in time?
I mean, every day, I wouldn't say every day is different, but we basically have a fairly scheduled week. Sometimes it's hard to keep it that way at peak. But I would say I'm like 60% office, 40% customers and field. Some weeks it might be 80-20, some weeks it might be 50-50. But yeah, I'm generally in the office, focusing on kind of the management team, working with our designers, GM, accounting, payroll, HR, working with PMs, that kind of thing. And then the thing I really enjoy is working with the customers and, looking at new projects and kind of helping the designers kind of bring those things to life and see that transition from initial call down to sale, down to work complete. And those are the types of things I like to work on now. It's more we have a fairly good workflow system that we follow. And not necessarily for accountability, but it does make people accountable and it's an easy thing to track. But it seems like it's constantly evolving, even in the past 3 years where we've had very consistent numbers and very consistent financial years. We're still working on that, trying to perfect it and make it better. And it's constantly changing.
Definitely. And we're jumping all around here, but going back to actually dealing with the client, payment structures for a specific project, you're doing big projects. So in terms of keeping the cash flowing, what are the payment structures for projects? Do you have like milestones in terms of work areas get completed, or milestones in terms of number of days on a project where a payment is due? How do you kind of structure those contracts, or is it specific to each project?
It's definitely specific to each project, but to start off, I would say I was horrible at it for 5 years and it was a cash flow disaster. And if you're starting out, get a contract put together, get a lawyer to check it, stick to it. And yeah, stick to it. So what we do now, I'd say maybe 20% of our projects are time and material based. So we're just charging hourly markup on materials. Everything's open book. We bill every 2 weeks. And we're working towards an overall budget. And generally that happens when we have a very large project, like over $1 million, because a lot of times when you're quoting that project, there's a lot of unforeseen still. And just, I think it gives good balance to the customer, it gives good balance to us. We're not going to inflate numbers too much because there's variables. They're comfortable with working towards a budget. They might save on certain items. They have the opportunity to cut and paste a little bit as well. And then on those projects, they're working, every time they get an invoice, they get a copy of the budget sheet. So they can see whatever change orders have come on, where they're at overall, what they've spent, what they've paid, what's left. And then our contracts, which we have really tightened up over the years. We'll have a look at what do we got to spend right away. So we got to buy the stone, we got to pay a few sub trades or give them deposits, say for a sport court, outdoor kitchen. Sometimes this stuff gets spread out over the contract, but the past 2 years we've been doing it at the beginning because order times have been such a disaster. So say it's a $500,000 job. We might need 200 to start to buy everything, buy all the product, get sub trades lined up, get in the schedule for things, whether it's to get a pool shot or order material. And then whatever's left after the deposit phase, we usually do like 25%, 50%, 75, and then we usually leave them anywhere from 8 to 10% hammer at the end. And generally that's to be paid upon completion or owner satisfaction within 15 days. And when we're doing our draws, when we are tracking against that budget sheet and we hit the 50% mark, even if it's not a billing week, we send that to the customer. We say we'd like to get paid within 7 days, which is in the contract. It allows you to work with their money most of the project until the end. It gives you a little more hammer to make sure you're getting paid on time. I would say only twice in the past 8 or 9 years we've left a job because and don't get me wrong, we didn't get it Friday, we're gone. But if by the next Friday we haven't got it, we're probably gone. So that's only ever happened a couple of times. So for the most part, customers are good. And I think too, like we always say, if they know what they're getting, when they're getting it and how much it costs, it should be no problems.
Absolutely. That was really interesting to get to hear your spin on that for payment structures. And the next question I ask you after that is a horror story you've experienced in your business. And the reason why I ask that is just to help those just starting out in business or maybe even in business to get to understand things that can go wrong on the job site or in business in general, prepare themselves for, these things, or maybe even put in safeguards in place in their business to prevent these things from happening. But Kevin, do you have a horror story here that you'd want to share with us?
Yeah, I probably have a few from long ago. There's probably some recent ones as well, but maybe not so much financially, but a good financial one is I used to have a customer who was a repeat customer for a very long time. And the work we were doing for them was fantastic work. And we pretty much had free reign as far as creativity and, but they were notoriously awful at paying, like 6 months, 8 months. And the projects continued to increase in value. And it just got to the point where we couldn't operate like that anymore. Like, we've got all these other people who are great payers, and we're basically funding this one-off who was a great customer. But eventually, and that's, 7-8 years ago now, but the romance of having great projects and great work and somebody who is, I love it, carry on, but doesn't pay is not very romantic.
Makes a lot of sense there.
Yeah. And it's tough because you get wrapped up in it.
Right.
You see the $1 million job and go, oh, this, especially when you're new, you get too excited about what you think you're going to make or the opportunity to make it. And again, if you don't get paid or you had to carry it for 5 months or you've been in your line of credit for months and months and months because you haven't been paid. And not only that, you can't run your business properly.
Yeah.
Right? Like when you have good cash flow, it's easy to make decisions.
Yeah. You
need to buy something, you buy it. You want to invest in something, you do. You need to hire somebody else, get another truck, whatever it is. When cash flow is good, it's way easier to make decisions.
Definitely. Excellent advice throughout this whole podcast here. And my final question to you, Kevin, is what is one thing you know now that you wish you knew from the very beginning? And that can be business related, personal related, whatever it might be in your timeline that you want to talk about. But what's that one thing you know now that you wish you knew from the very beginning?
Yeah. Again, there's probably a lot more than one. And I guess, some of the ones that I would say that we don't need to get too in depth with, but fitness, stay healthy, educate a lot, read the right books too. Like, it's great to read fictional, but there are some fantastic books that will help you as a business mentally, structure wise. Like, there's some great books out there. But I would say the thing I wish I would have done earlier was hired more office staff. I think our growth in the field went quite quickly, like in a 3 to 5 year period. I was still working in the field every day, going home at night. My wife and I were doing the books, which was also not great. I shouldn't say that it wasn't great. You do those things when you're a young business, right? Like, you work till 10 or 11 o'clock every night. And sometimes we still do. But not with my wife anymore. She's not involved in the business anymore. But I think I always fought hiring an accounts person, because I felt like, oh God, I'm gonna have to train them now and show them how I do everything. And do I really want them to know everything? And once I did that, it was like, whoa, I have way more time now. Like, you start thinking somebody working 40 hours a week, if that was a job that you were doing, whether it was invoicing or quoting. So then I got a little taste of it. And then a couple of years later, we hired another person in the office. And then I had a friend of mine saying, and this is a guy who's got many very successful businesses, he just said, the best money you spend sometimes will be in the office. And that's when we hired our first designer. And I can remember Colin, who's been with me for 15 years and is our GM now. We hired our first designer, and we were like, what are we going to get this guy to do? And now we have 4. So it's funny how once you start doing those things, the other really good part of the whole office thing was moving out of the house. That was when our growth really took off, when we had a presence locally in Port Carling. There was a lot more convenience with trades dropping in, customers dropping in. Ease of work was easy. And then going home at night, you're going home. Mm-hmm. You weren't going having dinner and then going back into your office because you had invoicing to do or statements to send out or whatever it was. So creating that separation was good. But yeah, I would say don't hesitate to spend the money in the office.
Can you recall that first hire, the first office hire, and what size your business was in terms of how many people in the field at that point in time?
Yeah, we probably had like 8 or 10, something like that. But we were starting to do quite a few more projects. And the other thing, we were doing a lot of hydro seeding at the time. So hydro seeding is fairly seasonal here, but you'd be doing like, maybe 20 or 30 sites a week, different hydro seeding. It's like kind of like the maintenance customers. But trying to keep up with that invoice, and then the invoice wouldn't go out on time. It was now 3 weeks later that they got the invoice, but nothing had grown yet because they hadn't watered it. And you know what I mean? So now they don't want to pay because so then we started just doing it live. So people were paying as soon as we were done. And, but yeah, I think anything like office software, we use LMN, which that also really changed our business. We love it. We still love it. We've probably had it 5-6 years now. We still don't, I think, use everything to its potential that it can do, but for quoting and tracking and timesheets and payroll and all, that's a good place to start. But yeah, office support is key, especially if you're the owner that's doing the work.
Yeah.
Right. Your value paying somebody $30 an hour to do your paperwork and you generating whatever you're generating in the field and not having the stress of it at night and time to spend with your kids and your wife and or your husband or however, it's kind of a no-brainer. But it's a hard one to get over.
Yeah. Because
people just look at it as a cost, but it's like buying a piece of equipment. Like, it's going to generate money.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, and kind of coming full circle to what you said earlier, and knowing your numbers, you should already kind of be factoring in working towards what your goals are. If that next goal is hiring that office admin person, knowing your numbers is just going to help you get over that, I guess, mental hurdle of, taking on that extra cost.
100%. And that's all it is too. And ideally, I think I probably could have done it sooner if I would have found somebody who didn't mind working outside once in a while. You know what I mean? Like maybe I really only, or you hire a service, like a bookkeeping service that will do 20 hours a week for you. There's lots of ways to do it. And yeah, I think it's a super important thing. Again, cash flow, everything, like it'll just help you dramatically.
Yeah. And Kevin, this has been an excellent interview. Thank you so much for your time today. Where do you want to send our audience to find out more about you, yourself, Muskoka Landscapers, wherever you want to send them to, and any parting pieces of advice?
So we're at muskokalandscapers.ca is our website. Instagram's the same. That's a good one. We're trying to stay fairly active there. And yeah, if you're ever in the area, stop in and we'll go for a tour or have a pint or a coffee or something. And thank you, Mike. It's great. I mean, I love following the show, and you get some great guests on here. It's awesome.
Thank you so much. I'm gonna have to take you up on visiting out there someday. So yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast episode. Go check out Kevin there at muskokalandscapers.ca on Instagram. And once again, if you need help with your bookkeeping, accounting, or CFO services this year, Cycle CPA, go check them out, cyclecpa.com or cycle_CPA on Instagram. Mention the How to Hardscape podcast, get $200 off their services there. And also, if you need software to help streamline your processes in your business, like budgeting and estimating, the How to Hardscape headquarters can be for you. You can check it out and learn more at members.howtohardscape.com, or if you're listening to this, just shoot me a message on Instagram at howtohardscape, and I'll let you know what we got going on over there. And we look forward to meeting with you next week on the How to Hardscape podcast.